Hey,
Hello.
Good morning.
good morning. How are you guys doing?
Good, good.
Great.
I was thinking about getting my third cup of coffee, and then I realized the countdown, but here we are.
I said right away at the start.
I know. You told me when the proper timing was, and I didn't take care of that window. That's okay.
Yeah. Nobody listens.
Maybe we'll have it delivered to you.
Enterprise AR coming for the live demos, or come for the Dex calls, but stay for the live demos. It's excellent. I don't know if you had a chance to see. I did the Learn Together program that Microsoft is launching. So you're trying to get up and running in Fabric, and you want your certification. We've got this great set of trainings where I actually go through all the trainings together with people, answer questions and stuff. And so you got to see firsthand me doing a live demo on an official Microsoft channel.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And flubbing it. So
Yes.
it's fine. It was
Yeah, there's a saying for DBAs. You're not a senior DBA until you've dropped a table in production, right? So I think you're a senior presenter now.
Yeah. No, it's fine. So I was on one screen, we were talking about something, and like the producer chimes in and says, "Tell them about the Git integration." I'm like, I don't think there is any Git integration here, and I'm just like frantically trying to keep talking while looking over the entire interface. Like, is there a new button? There's no new button. It's at the workspace level.
Oh, so that's even weirder, right? Because you have somebody in your ear that the audience can't hear.
Yeah. Well, it's a chat, right? But you can see the chat.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe that he had a different audio channel to you or something. That would that would really throw me off.
Yeah.
Think of my
So it's like all of a sudden, like I'm talking, and all of a sudden, like
Nice.
Well, good morning, everyone. We got SQL Gene here. SQL Gene. Like Kevin and I know you, but maybe other people don't. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm offended that anyone may not know me. No. So I do Power BI consulting, and I make training videos. And the first 12 were on Pluralsight, but next week I'm going to be launching my own about Power BI performance tuning. Yeah, it's exciting and nerve-wracking. So we'll see how it goes. My dog and my husband will thank you if you buy one.
So we're there. Kevin and I have posted links out on this.
Synchronized links. Yeah.
Yes.
We're in competition today.
Yeah. The Hey Alex won. So yes, that's right. Oh yeah, I am trying to hit 20,000 subscribers. You're right, but it would be great if anyone is interested in some training in the Power BI space. Head over to SQL Gene's. When does this go live? I know you're launching on.
Yeah, so the first module is already up on YouTube. So you can either go to Teachable and it's free there, or you can go to @SQL Gene on YouTube. It's free there. You can try before you buy. And then on Monday, February 5th, the course is going to launch officially. So if you get up at like midnight Eastern time, first 20 are going to be, first 50, I'm getting math. First 50 or $20. And then do we want a special code for your channel? We'll say if you use code Kratos, right?
There we go.
Launch week, it'll be 50% off. So $50, and then after that, it's $100 till like Black Friday.
50% off, you said?
Yep, 50% off for launch week. So the 5th through the 11th.
Okay, April 5th through the 11th. We're putting this in now.
February.
Yeah, we are April, 5th.
Jeez, man. Everyone's going to show up in 2 months and be like, where's my discount?
No, you just gained a whole much more time to complete your content.
Good, because I'm putting it out like a module at a time. So I'm laying out the track as I go.
All right, so there we go. We're even going to post this up. We got a little thing here, 50% off.
Yes.
February 5th. I
Perfect.
should probably have your like LinkedIn here or your posts in there. There we go. A training.sqlgene.com.
There
we go. So we got this up. So we've got this up. Please go out and do this. Note, Kevin and I make $0 off of this. So this is a complete and total
I'm costing them electricity right now, in fact.
Yes.
That's right. So this is only for your benefit. We're not paid shills at all here. So.
I mean, I'll buy you a beverage at the next conference, but I won't be in Vegas, so I don't know when we're going to see each other next.
All right.
Ooh. Well, just come to Atlanta next week because I'll be there.
I'll be there.
Chris won't be there. Well, you and I will.
I'll buy you a drink. All right.
There you
Hashtag ad. I'll buy Kevin a drink in Atlanta.
Oh, awesome. Well, good deal. Now, just for people's notifications, we are all here. Like, we want to answer questions. We want this to be part of a conversation. Handful of rules. We're following Guiding Cube rules. Please prefix any questions you want Gene to answer, or Kevin or I, with a Q, so we can get those queued up and we can bring them up at the appropriate time. And please don't spam the channel. We haven't had any of that, so it feels like not a problem. But like, don't start now. And then remember, I do a lunch and learn on Wednesdays with Christina. Hey, Christina, I think I saw you in the chat earlier. So this week we have Rui Romano, and we're going to be going over CI/CD in the fabric space. So perfect timing on that. Awesome.
So speaking of questions, and Eugene, I see you answered it in the chat, but let's go ahead and put it up, and you can answer for everybody.
Yeah,
will
I don't want to mess up your process.
Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. That happens. So, is it going to be on Pluralsight, your training as well, or
no? So I'm still doing some stuff here and there for Pluralsight, but for anyone who doesn't know, they were purchased by Vista Equity about 2 or 3 years ago. So they did a reverse IPO, and unfortunately, about a year ago, they laid off like 400 employees and kind of changed the terms for authors. So I'll still be doing stuff with Pluralsight, but part of the goal is to have a more sustainable kind of career for me. And so I'm doing self-hosted on Teachable. So you'll be directly supporting me, my husband, and our 4-pound Chihuahua Tyson if you buy this course.
Always good to be in control of your own destiny.
That's the hope. I mean, it's provided a lot of flexibility for me. I'm a caregiver for my mom. God, how old is she? She's born in 1950, so she's 73. So working for myself and having passive income has really given me the flexibility when she calls and she says, "Oh, I'm out of orange juice. I'm going to die of scurvy." And I'm like, "All right, Mom, I'll sure."
But just think, you'll be the first in so many years that you'll make history.
Right?
Kind of a weird way of looking at it.
Yeah, she doesn't say that directly, but I'm sure you guys have dealt with this with your parents. Like, it's like there's a lot of emergencies that come up that do not seem to me like emergencies. It's like, you're not going to die, Mom. You're not going to starve. You can wait a day. Because I'm out there Mondays and Fridays. Like, she'll be fine.
Well, I think then it's more of a loneliness.
I think so. I agree.
Right? And
yeah, for sure.
I think there's a big epidemic of that, especially after the pandemic, and people were lonely to begin with, and then the pandemic made them much more isolated. And about 2 years ago was kind of when the straw that broke the camel's back, right? Like, she just started acting up, started making silly mistakes. Like, she put a can in the microwave, like all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, I know. Yeah. And I think a lot of it was just all the isolation kind of piled up after a while. So yeah, for sure.
All right.
Yeah. We do have a question here. I'm just going to bring this up quick before we talk more. But no DAX columns does not. DAX is the only thing you can use for measures. Like, DAX is for measures. Use it for measures. We don't have to go get much deeper into that. But
you have to use it for measures, and you don't want to use implicit measures. So write explicit measures.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Put in as many squares as you can.
Yes.
Yep. And watch the Explicit Measures podcast on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we'll give a plug for our friends over at Power BI Tips. And that's great. All right. So, Gene, can we talk about what's in your course? I understand why, right? So, hey, you were a consultant. You're driving most of your revenue through Pluralsight. That got dramatically cut. Now you set up your own course.
Yeah.
And so this is the first one we're going to see. Are we going to see more out here? What's your?
I'm
Do you have a
hoping,
plan
yeah.
or there? Yeah.
Well, a plan, right? What's the joke? If you want to make God laugh, make plans, right?
Yeah.
But yes, I'm trying to tell a joke to God. So part of the motivation with the performance tuning course is I have a few blog posts, and the top three, the first two are DAX error messages because those are a nightmare to debug, right? In terms of popularity, and then the third was like a comprehensive performance tuning blog post at SQLGene.com. And a lot of people would go to that. And I think the reason is performance tuning Power BI is a challenge in part because it's a multi-tool, multi-engine kind of thing, right? It's not like SQL Server where you can just get really, really good at SQL.
Right.
And there's not a lot of people in this space. So you've got Nicola Illick, he's got some videos. You've got the SQL BI guys who just do DAX. If you try to performance tune Power Query, you'll find 50 Chris Webb blog posts, but there's not a lot of people going wide on this. And so I wanted to make something that goes wide because it's just hard to know where to start, hard to know how to isolate the problem, right? There's a joke about, someone goes into the doctor and says, "Doctor, everything hurts." And he's like, "Well, that seems odd. What do you mean?" And it's like, "Well, when I touch my head, it hurts. When I touch my arm, it hurts. When I touch my leg, it hurts." It's like, we have a broken finger, right? And so Power BI can feel like that sometimes, like, well, where everything, it's just slow. So that was the goal with the first course. I'm hoping to eventually build out basically a pre-con's worth of training. So if you really believe in me, I've got an early founder pass for $300 that'll just be the next 3 years of content I make on Teachable, and I've got a plan to basically do a deep dive on each portion. So a video on performance tuning for Power Query, for SQL import, for direct query, for data modeling, for DAX, all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the goal. But I mean, we'll see how this all works out. But eventually I'd love to be able to have basically a day's worth of training. And part of the thinking is like, as you guys are well aware, Power BI Premium is expensive, right? And it's not like there's a sliding scale. It's these stepwise SKUs. And so when you're at the precipice of like, do we stick with P1 and be slow for $5,000, or do we go up to P2 for $10,000 a month? It's literally cheaper to just spend a week learning how to performance tune instead of paying $5,000 every month for eternity.
Right.
So that's the long-term
That is so
goal.
true. Yeah, it's so true, but it's also such a hard sell sometimes too, right?
Sure.
So, but
yeah,
I think you giving options and just kind of like how you laid it out there, right? People should take note of that. Of this is how I could sell my management on getting training versus, hey, if you want to go up and pay, another 5,000, 60,000 for the year versus
it's like, would you rather pay $500 for the training and give me a week to see if we can improve this, or $5,000 every month? At a certain point, that's the cost of a house after a couple of years, right?
Right. And it is shocking the number of companies that just go down that path because, okay, I can toggle it on and I'm good. But
it's the go faster button.
Yeah. How often are you going to hit that go faster button? And before you go, hang on a second here, I've got hundreds of these models that are not performing. Should we go in and do that? Right. Like,
well, and that's, I think there's a bit of a trap with Power BI, because one of the things I mentioned in like the video that's free about, like, the whole thing of this is, why is this a sudden problem, right? With, at least with SQL Server, you're paying out the wazoo if you don't provision it right and you don't tune it right. But with Power BI, the whole mantra is $10 per user per month. And you're like, well, I don't need to worry about performance about the bus because I'm just buying a bus ticket. I don't care, right?
Right.
And it's fine until, again, you go to premium, you're like, I need a bus. I'm going to buy the bus. And suddenly the engine maintenance is important, right?
Yep.
So I think it catches some people by surprise because they don't have to think about it, especially because performance is really good out of the box. Like, if you do just a couple things, if you query fold, star schema, all that kind of stuff, like by default, most of the time it's really good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you're spot on, especially on the whole like, hey, I already bought Pro, right? Like, how many companies got an E5, realized,
Yeah.
oh, we've got Pro for like everybody now. Okay, everyone just have Pro until they start to encounter like, oh, well, we need these premium features and yep,
Right. We want 48 refreshes per day or larger models, and
yep.
yeah, it's something that a lot of people don't think about until they're paying for the whole capacity.
Right, right. And you take a block of pros or developers
Yeah.
who are building in Power BI Pro, and then they just port what they had onto that capacity, and they don't know what's going on there, right? And
Right.
um,
Yep.
I do know that like a lot of people, um, or a lot of times, a lot of companies, Microsoft has that Pro capacity scaled way the heck up so that it performs, it gives people good performance.
Right.
And then when they move that same stuff onto something that's a dedicated capacity, it's much harder for them.
Yeah.
Hmm.
No, it makes sense.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we had one question of the day that we try to do here, and that I think we had is how many in the chat. I want to know how many tools are you guys using to do Power BI performance tuning? Like, is it one? Is it two? Are you just in desktop?
Right.
I'll leave that up so that we
Do
can
you
talk.
do as my boss would say, like poke and hope, right? Like just copy a page, make some changes, and see what how it looks.
Yeah.
Because I've done that before, right? Like you copy it, you duplicate a page, and you just start deleting visuals till it goes fast, and then you work from there.
Oh, I never even thought about that.
The
That's
poke and hope method.
Yes, I don't recommend it.
No, it's tough, right?
In the video on YouTube, I recommend a strategy of isolate, measure, and modify. Right,
Mm,
and so it's much better if you can use Performance Analyzer or DAX Studio to get consistent readings for everything. But
sure.
yeah,
Yeah. Um, yeah, desktop and DAX Studio. Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, people aren't doing a ton of this stuff, but Gene, you've kind of come up with like a chart of all of the tools.
yeah, I was trying to give a lay of the land. Do you want to pull that up?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was funny because at first I started mapping out some, and I'm like, I post on social media like, oh, I think I missed some, and then I keep digging, and I'm like, I need to color code this. Um, but this kind of highlights a couple things. So one is the challenge of working with Power BI, especially performance tuning, is you're looking at all these different pieces. It's like being a car mechanic, and you're like, oh, I need to know tires, I need to know the transmission, I need to know the engine, all these different parts of the vehicle. And so got these different columns um, based on where it is. I've also color coded it. So apologies to anyone who's colorblind. But the yellow is stuff that's in Power BI Desktop. And this is the easiest to work with because you don't have to get admin permission to install anything. Purple is other Microsoft stuff. So it's, again, easier to kind of get permission, say, hey, can I get this installed? And then blue is the community tools, and green is a 100% paid option. Measure Killer and Tabular Editor have paid versions. But it's just kind of overwhelming if you're just starting out. If you're going from, I would call myself a report monkey. I don't know if I should call other people that, but you're a business user who's trying to get stuff done, and you're used to Power BI Desktop. You feel comfortable in it, and then it's slow, and you're like, oh, here's this smorgasbord, and I have to pick and I have to understand. Like it just gets to be a bit much. But I recommend for people, if you have no idea where to start, Performance Analyzer and DAX Studio will get you a lot of the way there. So start with those two if you have no idea what tools to look into.
So, Gene, do you still conceptually think Vertipack? Because like they added Vertipack Analyzer into Tabular Editor, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure if it still makes sense there, because like the whole thing with the VPAX file format and being able to look at this stuff in other places is really, really helpful.
Oh, yeah.
So Vertipack Analyzer might be something I need to revisit, honestly.
Okay.
Even just in DAX Studio, it's really nice being able to easily see all the data model stuff and export that file and that sort of thing.
Yeah, Oh, that's right. VertPack Analyzer is in DAX Studio too.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens when they make an open source library or whatever they did. Well, and it's funny because, like, again, trying to research this, I'm like, oh, VPAC's file, where's that from? And of course, it's from the Italians, right? Like, it sounds like something official from Microsoft, and like, no, they're like, yeah, this power pivot we made years ago, we've standardized it. Here's a library.
Yeah. Yeah. A power
So,
pivot of the DMV files, right?
So Gene, Alan was wondering,
Oh,
thinks it's a good chart. Is this also available on your website somewhere,
no,
or is
but
it
maybe
in your training?
I can make a blog post or something, but no, I don't have this. I posted on some social media, but no, I should probably put something up on the blog.
Yeah, I know when you were working on it, I saw conversations on the social media, and maybe did you put the final on that as well?
Yeah, what I'll also do is I can upload to my Teachable. So give me like a day because I need to do this. I'll put a PDF of the slides on there. So worst case on Teachable, you should be able to download for free the PDF of the slides here.
Or you could just bookmark this video at this time.
Yeah, just take a
come
tiny
back here,
screenshot.
Yeah,
And then
over and
send
over
it to
again,
someone else and add some JPEG.
That works
compression.
too.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'll say, Kevin, you shared on a live stream 2 weeks ago about the topics that are on the DP600, and I can't find that image anyplace else, so I shared like the time-stamped video
Oh, that's
to
right.
other
I
people
saw
all the
that.
overtime. Yeah, like here it is. This is where it's at.
Looks like we got some questions coming in. I don't know if we want to touch on those.
Yeah. We could jump on. Let me.
Oh, I'm not trying to mess up your flow. I
No. You
don't make
had,
sure anyone gets ignored.
No, you had a good conversation. That's why I kind of put Alan's up ahead of time. But
yeah. So Dia has a good question about, like, okay, Fabric's not available for my organization. So the entire bundle, assuming I make it and don't, like, get hit by a lottery ticket or anything, is 100% relevant if you're just using Power BI, right? Because everything's going to be focused on importing from SQL or other data sources, doing stuff in Power Query, doing stuff in DAX with the modeling and the measures, doing stuff with Direct Query. None of that requires Fabric itself. That's all Power BI. But even then, a lot of that stuff applies to Excel because Power Query and Power Pivot are in Excel, right? So a lot of the stuff here, even in the free stuff on YouTube, applies to if you are stuck in Excel with Power Pivot and Power Query. Now, the tools you use to access that information are much more limited. But I found out this week, DAX Studio does allow you to open it up from inside Excel. So you can look at a Power Pivot model with DAX Studio, which I did not expect.
Really? I knew you could connect in, but you had to, like, it used to be this like kludgy.
Oh, you would look up the random port that
Right.
SSAS would spin up in the background when you open up, like, Power BI Desktop.
Yeah. Yep.
The funniest thing, I did this as a demo years ago, and I brought it up during like a chalk talk with Microsoft, and I probably shouldn't have, but because they're like, that's not supported. But the PBIX file format is just a zip file, right? And in the very early days, the data model was a .abf file, so you could restore it to SSAS.
Oh, really?
This was like 2016. This is like 2017 era. Actually,
all right, yeah. Oh, I can. Yes, you're right. I remember doing that.
Yeah. Back in the Wild West days.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Oh my gosh! Actually, that is the technique I use to take a tabular model I built in Excel.
Sure.
I extracted it out. I put it in Power BI Desktop. And then in Power BI Desktop, I extract it out and put it out on SSAS using that. And that solution that started in Excel it was for 3 users. When it finally went to SSAS, it scaled all the way up to 30,000. So that was a fantastic.
Yeah, at least now, I don't think we have it for Excel, but at least we've got the whole XMLA and the desktop hardening. And so, like, now there's supported ways to kind of take the brain out and put it into your Frankenstein monster.
Yeah, it's definitely not as hacky as it once was.
Yeah.
Well, we got another question as well that came in from LinkedIn.
Yeah,
And this
I
is going to
don't.
take you down a little different path as well, but
Well,
right,
I'm assuming. So I'm assuming they're talking about paginated reports in
right.
Power BI, right?
Yeah.
I would too, right? Yeah, but you know, you can run it very quickly. He says in SSRS, right? But say on your, you know,
I don't
the
have a good
report
immediate
builder.
answer to that. I mean, my best guess is paginated is running as software as a service. They had to do a bunch of work to make it scale to that because
Mm-hmm.
it's not designed. It's designed as the whole monolith kind of approach, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
And so when they first moved it over, it was only in premium capacity. And then later, only recently, it's available in Pro, right?
right,
So my immediate guess is it's not designed to really scale particularly well because they've kind of had to kludge it.
yeah.
I would think that there's ways to do some performance tuning or some measuring on that, but honestly, I haven't gotten to the point yet where I've needed to look into that portion. That's
Yeah,
like that's like 10 on the list of the courses I'd like to do.
yeah. No, but I think you're spot on, right? And I've seen the
Yeah,
same thing that he has seen is, you know, I'll write something that is running extremely fast. You know, I a lot of times will put a stored procedure in if I'm going directly to SQL, test that stored procedure. Another way it runs extremely quickly, but then the rendering up on the service seems to take
right.
forever. And then if you watch your performance monitoring and everything for a while, you could see it was taking a whole bunch of time, like especially when you had to put it up. I used to put some up on premium capacities and stuff. Man, it was you had to be
Yeah.
very careful. I do think they're getting better. I think they're all aware of that, and it's
It's
getting there.
awkward, right? Because the thing is, like, there was a while where all of us thought SSRS was on life support because it's kind of
Yeah.
what, like, you look at it and it ties into Power BI guy's comment. When you look at what happened to MDX, like, okay, that clearly I haven't seen any investments in multidimensional in years,
Oh no,
No,
right?
that's
it's
Like,
all but dead. Yeah.
right.
yeah.
Yeah.
Like there's still fragments of it where like Excel will talk to stuff using MDX and all that kind of thing, but and for a while, I thought that was going to happen to SSRS, but Power BI guy says, well, just take the extra 30 minutes, migrate to Power BI. Power BI will never ever be good for anything that needs a page number or printed,
Right.
right? Unless, in my personal opinion, because it was not designed for that, and it's not good at very precise control over the layout and design how stuff looks, but it also doesn't do table expansion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if let's say you've got a
It did.
table with 100 rows or something like that, if you try to print in Power BI, it's basically taking a screenshot. With
Yep.
SSRS, it'll say, "Oh, you need this to be 20 pages. That's fine."
Right.
And in my last job, we had stuff like that because I did a lot of reporting SSRS, and we would do work orders for technicians. So this was fire protection systems. And so we would have a work order that would list every fire alarm, every audible, every siren, every portable fire extinguisher that they had to go and find. You're never going to do that in Power BI. You're not
Right.
going to do this giant checklist. You're never going to make invoices in Power BI. Something you're going to send the customer like, here, you owe me $2,000. Like, it's just not going to happen. So there's some use cases where I think you're stuck with paginated.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I think paginated has such an extensive code base to do specifically that. I
Yes.
really like the story of a Power BI with an embedded paginated report that you can connect together, that you can
Sure.
filter down, and you can, like, okay, I want to create something. I want to have analytics drive my
Yes.
work.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is a great story, right? So you
Start with the
have
why and then dig down to the what when you need it. Yeah,
right,
I totally agree.
yeah.
Part of me, as someone whose career used to depend on SRS, I feel a little bad they like put it down the memory hole. Like they don't talk about it. They file off all the serial numbers. It's just paginated reports.
Yeah.
So I'm like, you're just taking part of my career and
Filed off
just
the
erasing
serial
it.
numbers.
Yeah, but what can you do?
But no, but you're right. They've rebranded. I think a lot of people had, like, oh, paginated reports. Why don't I just do business objects for that matter? Or I'm sorry, SSRS reports.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, you still have those needs in places, and
Yep.
I mean, we're going to be doing
It's not going away anytime
Yeah,
soon.
invoices for. I mean, when will we not do invoices?
Well,
That's
the way that I talk about it is you've got this whole like BI maturity pyramid. I'm sure you've seen the graphic, right? And you have to start
Mhm.
with operational reports, the stuff that
yeah.
runs the business.
hmm
Once you get those in place, then you can start doing analytics and then like predictive analytics and all that kind of stuff. But like a lot of businesses still need help with the pieces of paper that get passed around physically or digitally that run the business, invoices,
Right.
work orders, timesheets, all that stuff.
Yeah, and until you get to that point, it's really hard to do that, right? And
Yeah.
I think people see Power BI and they think that, oh, we can just leapfrog those other areas because it's so easy. It's drag and drop, and
Right.
that does
Yeah.
not alleviate the needs in those other spaces.
There's an iceberg problem for sure, right?
hmm
Like
Mhm.
it's in marketing, it's you sell the sizzle, not the steak. But like you need to source the steak, and a lot of
Yeah.
that is the boring data governance stuff, and just maturity model stuff.
No, that is an excellent point. I will also say I think a lot of the performance challenges you might see with paginated reports versus running SSRS is your own box dedicated to running of that
Right.
report versus a cloud scale multi-use hot swapped data platform that's designed to have sub-second responses and immediately hand things over, right? Like
Yeah.
that's not SSRS, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you're getting it through Pro, you're dealing with the noisy neighbor problem.
Yeah.
If
Mhm.
it's premium, okay, that's a little bit different, but even then,
But yeah, I mean, even then, I've rarely seen a customer or anyone who has a premium capacity who isn't aggressively trying to max out how much they could possibly cram into that premium
oh yeah,
capacity,
no,
Definitely. Yeah.
the
right?
in the whole bus analogy, you've got like two people per seat just sitting on each other. It smells. It's hot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like, oh, you are way overloaded. No wonder you have,
Yep.
like it just got slow on me. Yeah, wasn't just got slow on
Yeah.
you.
Right.
Yeah,
What was
Oh,
John doing at that time?
right, right.
John, yeah. Was somebody developing at the same time on the same capacity, right?
yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Um, are any other details you can give? What are for what people are going to find inside that
Yeah.
first module that's out there?
Yeah. So the first module that's free, it's I describe it as a lay of the land, like a map, as opposed to a
hmm
deep dive. It's just to get you oriented if you're feeling kind of lost in the woods. And so I've got a video on kind of performance tuning strategy, right? So the principles of troubleshooting there of isolate, measure, modify. Then I talk about a lot of common causes of why you have these slowdowns, and a lot of it boils down to three things. Either you have more data than you need, don't bring in those columns, don't bring in those rows, put in some filters. You're doing work you don't need to, right? So I know you're a fan of Roche's Maxim. You probably have a button somewhere to bring it up, but try and
I got a
push as much
hat.
of that. Yeah, try and push as much of that work upstream as you can. Like Power Query is flexible, but it's not going to be as performant as a well-tuned SQL server, right? Um,
Mhm.
and the third is just misuse of the engine, right? I imagine on this channel we'd count calculated columns as one of those, but I've seen people try to make handmade visuals where they put like 9 different objects on the screen, right, to make their own KPI visuals, like little lines and boxes and stuff. Many to many relationships, bidirectional filtering, all this stuff that you should avoid wherever possible. Um, and then where is it slow? I kind of run through some of the different pieces of whether it's rendering or refresh and some of those, and then I've got seven minutes of those tools and just walking through all of them. So that's what's available for free right now. And then the rest of the course is digging a little bit deeper into, okay, well, how do we make it better for Power Query? How can I measure with the refresh? Because there's 3 or 4 different tools to learn about there. I talk about how better modeling. Yeah, you're gonna have to click the down arrow to see everything because we got a lot of
Yeah.
clips.
Oh my.
Um, I'm gonna be about a module a week coming out, so I've sent module 2 over to my editor. But how can improving the modeling improve performance? How can doing better DAX code improve performance? What can I do about visuals? And a lot of times it's just less stuff on screen. Like I love report tooltips and drill throughs. And then finally direct query, because direct query is weird because I talk about it in module 1, but you're trying to understand where is it slow, and you're like, oh well, it's either a refresh problem or a rendering problem. And direct query is like, oh, I've just connected the two, so you don't know where the issue is, right? So direct query has its own challenges, but it also has a lot of advanced features to be able to improve performance, like user-defined aggregations. So the goal is, by the end of this course, you at least know where to look, where to start. It's to get you oriented, essentially.
That makes great sense. I am a huge fan of those aggregations with direct query behind that. Do you cover that inside of advanced features, or where do
Yeah,
you...
I need to. I forget if it's going to be its own demo or not, but that would be under like composite modeling,
Okay.
because you have to use a composite model. Yeah. There's no content there right now, right? Like,
Yeah, I have to
but
unlock it.
yeah. So, but because you have to turn on composite modeling to take advantage of the user-defined aggregation. So I'm definitely going to include that for sure.
Okay. Wow, this is a fantastic, man. You've got a ton
Yeah,
of
I'm
stuff out
excited.
here.
Well, it's been annoying on my end because I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna do something short, like an hour and a half, and the free stuff is 40 minutes on its own. And as I keep digging, I'm like, oh, I should probably mention this piece and this piece and this piece, and it's just the scope creep has been an issue.
Sure. Because there's a lot, right? Like,
Yeah,
again, people go, oh, Power BI Pro is free with my E5.
Oh,
I don't have to spend any time. And it was fast for the little bits I was doing. So
right.
therefore, it's always going to be free and always fast, right?
Well, that's the thing is like there are features that for 95% of use cases make it blazing fast.
Mhm.
If you're using the buttons in Power Query, you've got query folding just right out of the box. You don't even have to think about it, right? Most of the time. If in DAX, it's VerPack compressed, right? So you can have repeated values. That's fine. It's all in memory, and
Mhm.
everyone's running around with at least hopefully 8 gigs in their machine. I've got 32 down here. I probably should go up to 64. And if you've got a quarter of a gigabyte model, I've helped plenty of customers with like that small of a size. Like, of course, it's going to be run fast. It's all in memory. It's just
right.
so that's one of
And
the reasons why you run into this sudden problem. Is it's fine until your data set, which was just a year of data, because it's a new data source, or you're just working on a subset and you're testing, keeps adding rows and it gets bigger, or you keep adding logic. Because I've had this happen where I had a DAX measure for like year-to-date sales or something like that, right? And the customer wanted to be able to change with a parameter which like thing was being measured. So this is before we had field parameters or field whatever they're called. And they want to be able to change the currency because they were a multi-currency company. Once you've nested like 2 or 3 if statements and 2 or 3 parameters, it switches from storage engine to all formula engine, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
suddenly it's stupid slow. And so it's the, you're trying to boil the frog, and eventually the frog hits you in the face when it jumps out of the pot, and you're like, I have a problem now. And
Yeah.
so that was the kind of the goal. This is like, you have a problem today. I know sometimes when Chris talks, it seems like he wants to just burn everything down and start fresh. But that takes time, and sometimes you've got a problem now.
One thing I want to.
There's one thing.
There's
Yeah.
one thing I'm dedicated to. Just the one.
It's good to have a mission in life. It's good to have a mission in life.
So Gene, I got a question for you about your course.
Yeah.
Let's say somebody was kind of new getting into Power BI.
Sure.
Right? Do you think it would be worthwhile to kind of start with your course? And I'm going to give you my opinion before you totally speak.
Sure, yeah.
Just based on what I just saw, my answer would be yes, because I think you're going to give a lot of, right? I think they got to have some knowledge, but if they get into this earlier than later, I think it's going to help them out. What do you think?
So I largely agree. So I would say I try to explain things in a way that if you don't know what I'm talking about, you get it. I try to use a lot of analogies. there's a lot of things that if you're new to Power BI, you're going to have to look up. Like I don't take any time explaining the difference between a calculated column and a measure, but I talk about how calculated columns, for example, are compressed last, they slow down refresh, all this kind of stuff. And for me personally, learning Power BI, especially with DAX, understanding the internals was one of the biggest pieces, right? Because with visuals, you can drag and drop and you can get pretty far. With Power Query, you can click around and get pretty far. But with DAX, so many mistakes, so many issues are because I didn't understand how compression worked. I didn't understand storage engine versus formula engine. I didn't understand the internals. And there's a lot of best practices out there, and people will just kind of like shout it into the void. And yes, you should use a star schema. And yes, you should avoid certain things like bidirectional filtering. But if you can understand the why and the physics of it, it's so much easier to not only implement it, but then have intuition for the right decisions moving forward, right?
Yes.
So I think if you're feeling lost for how the hip bone connects to the leg bone, this course is going to help. But if you have no idea the difference between a calculated column and a measure, be prepared to do a lot of Googling, right?
That's why I kind of felt like maybe people need to get started just a little bit, but they should come here sooner than later, right? A lot of people look at things and go, well, I don't have to worry about performance tuning or that deep or whatever. But if you understand it earlier, I totally agree with you. Understanding the why, and to me, your course looks like it's laid out in a way that you should kind of be developing your.
And a lot of this helps with troubleshooting in general, right? So there's an analogy I use from Edward Goss in like the 1980s about how do you troubleshoot a problem, and it's like, how do you find a wolf in Alaska? So for our international viewers, Alaska is 6 times as big as the UK, big state. Imagine there's only one wolf. Well, what you do, and his advice is, you make a fence down all of Alaska, and then you wait and listen for that wolf to howl, figure out which side she's on, and then you make another fence, and you keep doing that, right? And that was advice for troubleshooting, right? And so a lot of times the fence you're making is print lining or breakpoints, but the same process applies for both troubleshooting and performance tuning. And so even if you're not worried about performance tuning, understanding how to see what DAX code is being run by your visuals and to run it in DAX Studio and modify it, like you're going to have a greater sense of control and comfort. And again, the first module is free on YouTube, and part of the goal there was, just to help people get oriented. Like, don't give me any money. We'll be fine. We're not starving. But check out the stuff on YouTube, because it can just help orient you of like, how do I be methodical? What are all the different places I need to look or understand for how the engine works?
No, I think not only that, right, but just looking at the course line out, and really this was the first time that I saw it.
Sure.
The thing that jumped out at me is the amount of time that you I think it was module 2 or 3 that was kind of talking about how do you define the problem, how do you find where it is. That was 13 minutes. That was your longest part, right? Because I think a lot of people don't spend that time. They just want to go, what are the tools? What do I got to look at? But really kind of getting, even on report development, right? Defining the problem, or like you just said here, how do you define where your performance problem is versus your requirements to produce it? That's a long,
and a lot of that's from me getting burnt in consulting, because I do a lot of small and medium business stuff, and someone will say, oh, a report is slow, right? And that's if I went to my car mechanic and said, my car is making a cha-chunk noise.
Right. And it's never there when it's never making it when you get it there.
Well, and the problem is there's a bunch of different places it can be slow. And there have been multiple times where someone's like, oh, the report's slow. And I assume they mean the rendering, and they actually mean the refresh. And I've learned I have to ask these questions and say, okay, how can we reproduce it? What user experience is it slow in? Right. And not only that,
that's a great point.
Yeah.
It's easy to get burnt on that. I used to be a DBA as well. And one of the things I learned with being a DBA is you can have a lot of confounding factors, right? So with SQL Server, it has an in-memory cache. And so if you run a query from a cold start, it might be slow. But the second time you run it, it's read that information into the in-memory buffer, and it'll be really fast. And if you don't know how to deal with that, you're going to go down a rabbit hole. Same thing with Power BI. DAX Studio allows you to clear out that cache, right? But the key point is you need to know how to measure and isolate. And if you don't have a programming background, you don't have a performance tuning background, you don't know that stuff. What you know is the visual feels slow, and my boss is mad at me.
Yep.
And when I go in, it's fast.
Yeah.
You have to take almost an engineering approach to this. And people don't have the background, which is, it's not their fault.
Right. And it's not your full-time job. So you're going in later in night when there's no other, like if you're on a premium capacity, there's no other noisy neighbors. And you're like, it works on my machine. Right. So,
And I think that's another good point and call out, right? Like we're talking about like, hey, a lot of people have 32 gigs of memory in their system, right?
Right.
Many people have gone to 64 gigs of memory. I just built a PC that has 128 gigs of memory in it, right? Like the experience I'm going to have local is going to be radically different than this experience I have in the service, right?
Yeah, the joke of like it works on my machine kind of thing. Well, it's like, well, you have to figure out how to get around that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't totally agree that everybody in business is going up to larger machines. The issue that I've seen a whole lot is business people are getting into doing Power BI, but the IT company goes, oh, well, you're not IT. You don't need a big machine. You just need, 8 gig. And then they're trying to do things and even on desktop, and they run into problems and convincing those IT orgs.
Especially, commonly if you're a business user, you're working off of like CSV files or Excel files. And so you're pegging the CPU, right? And like you can get caught by surprise with that. I mean, because I had a customer, this was a couple of years ago. He was a consultant freelancer, but he basically reduced phone bills for companies. So he would read gigabytes of telecom data. And he didn't have SSD, so his refresh was local and it was slow, and it would peg the CPU because CSVs don't have data types. So Power Query every time is doing this work it doesn't need to. Remember, unnecessary work. That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
And it can just be a challenge out there, right? We do have we started to get a whole bunch of questions in our chat here.
We've got like 10 minutes?
Yeah,
we can lightning round. Let's get them.
Let's hit on these. I'm going to go backwards because let's see here. We'll do Rannies. There are less resources online for data sources like AWS, Aurora, RDS, MySQL, Power BI. They've created views in AWS Aurora to Power BI, but there's an error message thrown in Power BI service that RDMS temp is full, hitting the limit temp tail max.
Oh,
do you want to, as a DBA, do you want to explain what's going on here?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna guess out of my butt, and then feel free to email me eugene@sqlgene.com, and I can try to help. So what I'm guessing is going on is that it is paging to disk, right? So there's a couple possible causes for this. There's a good chance that you have blocking operators. Either you have really complex joins that are memory intensive, or you have something going on that it can't stream the results as it goes. So an example would be a sort, right? It may be on the database server. It's having to do a sort, so it needs more memory, and the temp is filling up, right? So it could be an issue with the queries. It could be an issue with how Power Query is working with that, or Power BI is working with that. I haven't had to deal with Aurora before, but that would be my immediate guess. Now, I'm pretty sure Aurora is based on Postgres, so you can look at the execution plan for that, right? So that would be one of the things. I need to learn more Postgres, but there should be a way to do a trace, or in Power Query, you can do view native query, and that should work with Postgres. I haven't tried it. But if you can look at the execution plan, you should be able to hopefully get some more information. But feel free to email me, eugene@sqlgene.com, because I eventually, like number 15 on the list, if we get there, Power BI performance thing for Postgres is something I'd love to touch at some point.
Yeah, and that's a great question. And frankly, with the information we have, I think that's exactly the answer I would give too. So you are spot on there. All right. Gustavo is saying, consider you have a data extraction for invoices day by day.
Yeah, I think there was something else we kind of missed. I was looking through the chat on that. We need more information to say.
So I mean,
what's the question?
I get paid to just make up answers. So what I would say for this question is, look into incremental refresh, right? And so what that means is that you need to have date parameters that can query fold ideally to the data source, right? If it's flat files, you can do that based off a file name, if it's potentially in the file name, which is a neat trick. Otherwise, you're looking at normal filters and that sort of thing. But if you're doing that sort of issue, you want to do that, you may need a date column that has date modified or something along those lines. If you don't have that, or you can't just pull the last X days, then you may have to get a little bit more involved. When it comes to ETL, I've seen people do a byte hash and produce a modified date column based off of that. So that's my guess.
That is
a guess.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's a good guess. All right. Vibahas has asked, let's say we're converting SSRS reports to Power BI paginated reports. Do you have any utility tool to validate reports versus SSRS?
No one talks about any of this stuff. So no, I'm not familiar with any tool for that sort of thing.
Microsoft puts out a tool for migrating. Yeah. Nice. There is a tool. I don't have the link. I probably should have searched it, but there's a search for Microsoft's tool for migrating SSRS to paginated reports, because it actually first does a validation check to see can it support, awesome. Right? Because for a while, I think now in sub reports are allowed or whatever, but there's still certain things that SSRS has that paginated reports doesn't. So there's an official Microsoft tool to help you with that. There you go. I think Chris found the link.
Yep.
He's playing Hey Alex today.
and honestly, this is a great thing to test out, because like Kevin said, there's a handful of things that aren't supported, and you're going to have to find workarounds in order to address them. Okay.
Yeah. But I would still recommend going back to finding what the original business problem was that produced those SSRS reports, because as I'm sure all of you could attest to, we used to use SSRS reports to also do data analytics, right? Because you can put charts into it and stuff like that. I would say find those type of things and actually convert them to true Power BI reports. Take that time and then only migrate the SSRS reports that you have to have that pixel perfect, the invoices, the expanding of the tables, those type of things. I'm not a fan of just blindly taking 200 SSRS reports and moving them.
If you're going to be doing the work anyway, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a good time to clean it. It's like when you move from one house to another. Like, it's a good time to be like, do I need the ceramic pot that my grandma gave me? Maybe not.
Yeah.
And I think we just had a question. I thought he was asking about what external tools there are, but I was wrong. Yeah. He's saying, what's in your course other than DAX Studio?
So I'm hopefully everything, right? So I plan to have, I would like to have a demo for every tool that I mentioned in that slide that we did. So ideally, I'm going to show you how to use Profiler to look at refresh with Phil Seymour's refresh analyzer, how to look at built-in the Power BI query diagnostics, query review, performance analyzer. I'm paying for DAX optimizer, so you don't have to even test that out. So ideally, every single tool that I list in module 1, I'm going to have at least a demo on. Now, again, probably not going to go super deep. That'll all be later stuff. But hopefully everything, so you can get a sense of what this does and how easy it is to use.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Good question. And glad we were able to get deeper into that one.
Yeah.
And then I think the last question that I have that we were missing was Velt is asking, he migrated, he was having performance issues.
Yeah.
Any way to investigate or tune I know you can use SQL Profiler for like if you have premium or PPU, you can use SQL Profiler to monitor the tabular engine. I am not sure how
Yeah,
does
I don't know
paginated
what
reports, how would that work?
I don't know what events it surfaces, right? So if
Right.
you have premium capacity, you can use log analytics to track all that.
Oh, that's a good
Um,
point.
So-
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't know what event. That's the problem. Is like this is the redheaded stepchild to Power BI, unfortunately, and so it's not as popular, so there's not a lot of stuff talking about it.
Yeah.
Um,
But I think you're right. You know, you're going to probably have to enable log analytics if you want to get really deep of what's
I think
happening up
so.
on the service. If you're connecting to, you know, this kind of gets into it depends, right? Assuming that you kind of migrated your SSRS reports, I'm assuming you're connecting to a backend source like SQL Server, right?
Yeah.
First off, you know, take your SQL queries, move them out of your SSRS report, and make sure those are performant, right? That's always got to be step number one. And then if it's just running the subscription, you know, I don't know if you're using a Power Automate like the old way that we used to do it, or a new way that is the dynamic. There's probably more details we need here, but you know, log analytics might
We've
help.
got two
Another
more
thing-
questions, and
Yep.
we've got a hard end in like 30 or 60 seconds.
Yep.
So we're gonna see
Yep.
if we can finish these. Ronnie's asking, I'm using incremental
Going back
refresh,
to that
but
last
doesn't have
question.
star schemas.
You don't need star schema. The incremental refresh will work on anything that has a date column that represents when
Mhm.
it changes, right? And the big thing is that you want to use it on the biggest tables with the most transactions.
Okay.
Yeah. So even if you're using the one big table, it's just depending on how that's written behind the scenes, it may materialize that one big table in your
Yeah, if
source
it's just
system.
like if it's a log or something like that and it's append
Yeah.
only, yeah, you're fine.
It kind of gets back to the methodology or fencing it off, right? Where is the problem?
Yep.
You know, so
And with that, you can get Gene's course over at SQL Gene. The training, we've got that caption here.
Yeah,
right
training.sqlgene.com. It goes live on Monday and you can get 50% off through the 11th.
Yeah. Any other last words for the crew, Gene?
This has been fun. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's been fun to talk about. Apparently, I need to learn more about SSRS, and I need to put that picture up on my website somewhere. But otherwise, it's been good.
yeah,
Awesome.
SSRS was an interesting topic for us today.
People
So,
still use it, right? It's just no one talks about it.
yeah.
All right, we got Jet. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. Enjoy your weekend.
Peace.
Baker Tilly Digital combines strategic industry insight and advanced technical expertise to uncover and solve your digital transformation challenges. If you're interested in learning more, check out our website at bakertilly.com/digital.